if you took your keyboard and split it in the middle, what would this allow to do? This is a long-term review of the PERIX 624, which is the split keyboard I got eventually after realizing the following. This is the anatomy I have anyway. My shoulders are this wide apart. My arms are attached to my shoulders, my forearms are attached to my upper arms, and my hands are attached, well, eventually to my shoulders. So therefore, if I let my arms and hands and also shoulders hang kind of freely, then they are roughly this wide apart. So now if I take a normal keyboard and I then try to type, and also because I'm standing, maybe it's a little bit different, but mostly I think it's the same. You take your hands and then you need to rotate your shoulders kind of forward, and this puts you in this kind of position where you then have your hands and you can type with your hands next to each other because there is almost no space in between the hands if you type on a normal keyboard. Now, why would this be problematic? Because if I now try to stand upright and I am in this position, then my shoulders are kind of blocking my torso from going upwards because my arms need to be on the side and not in front of my body. So how could I put my arms not in front of my body, but to the side, by basically taking my hands that would lie on the keyboard and by splitting the keyboard and thus allowing my arms to move apart as much as I would like. So not only now do I have a split keyboard, but I also have a split desk, because eventually the problem was that if you then have a split keyboard, you still need to be kind of in front of the desk, but your arms are still to the side and your hands are also to the side, at least mine are. And so therefore the natural kind of position I wanted to be in was here, resting. Of course, also the height needed to be adjusted, and so I now can kind of rest here, and then I take these two halves of the keyboard and then I can be somewhat upright. Of course, it also depends on the position of the screens, which I can quickly show you. So I do have two screens here, and these two screens are also vertical because this seems to be kind of the layout that optimizes for where my eyes look at. And then here I basically have two plates on two standing desks, which are kind of bar desks, one could say. And these desks then hold basically these two plates. And these two plates I have mounted here and also on the other side here. And then I have these two halves of the split keyboard, which is now again the PERIX 624. And this then allows me to type in front of my screen with my arms and shoulders kind of in a relaxed position. Of course, it's not ideal. Sometimes I have shoes on that are barefoot shoes. Sometimes I am actually in socks. Sometimes I'm barefoot in here. So of course the height varies a little bit. And therefore, how high my shoulders are if I have them basically on these plates here also varies. So if I stand up like this, then of course now my torso is higher. And of course it depends a little bit. But in summary, I would say that this position here allows me to be more upright and to also have my shoulders kind of relaxed, and my shoulders mostly on the side and not in the front. So therefore my neck can also be more upright and my shoulders can kind of move back as they would if I kind of can just spread my arms out. So much for the theory and the anatomy kind of behind this thinking. So now what about the PERIX 624? It's a good keyboard, I would say, but it's not the best. But it's one that is split. And this was one of the only ones that was split and also did not cost 250 euros. So this cost, I think, roughly 60 or 70 euros. I got it refurbished from Amazon. It has basically two batteries. One is in here, and this one battery powers the one half, as you might have expected it. It is actually two, and these are, I think, AAA batteries. So these are the smaller ones, the Mignon, they are also sometimes called. Then there are these feet which they have, and there is also a power button as well as a connect button on each of these halves. So now you might wonder, why are there different points, and also what is this? This is a Galaxy tag which I use to turn on and off my light in here, and I figured I need to attach it somewhere where I basically have it right there when I enter the studio, and I think this is kind of the best location for this. So now there are also two small lights. The first one is the indicator of whether you have caps on, and the second one I think is just indicating that the key or the half of the keyboard is on, as you kind of are seeing. Now it is connecting, and then it is eventually connected. Now these two halves also kind of fit way better into a backpack or rucksack. Why? Because they are not that long, because they also don't hold a number pad, which is also a big downside, I would say, because I was kind of used to using a number pad, but I think the benefits of having the split keyboard kind of outweigh the downsides of not having a number board. So now let's take a look at the rest of the keyboard. So this is what it looks in total, and there are now a couple of different positions one can put this in. So to show this, I will tilt this a little bit downwards. So first of all, you can have it in this position, which is the maximum upward tilt, because there is another thing as well, which is that the hand is actually more like this. So if I have my hands here, then my hands are actually not like this if I would type, but more like this. So if I move them up now, they're also not like this, but more like this. So there is also an idea that is to tilt the keyboard basically into the right direction also, which would be the direction the hand is in, or the tilt the hand has if one just takes it and moves it upwards. And so now there are different positions. First of all, this white is for the right, as you kind of see, and this reddish is for the left. That's the first thing I think you need to understand. The second thing is now that, well, this therefore does not fit in here, but only in here. There are now a couple of different positions one can put this in. So I can take this here and then have it like this, and then I have way less tilt. I can also have it completely flat, but I am not used to this any longer, and so it's kind of weird for me, because this also kind of rotates the shoulder into this direction. If I have it upwards, then I rotate the shoulder outwards, as you just kind of saw. Now there are also a couple of different positions. So one would be, I think, this here, which would allow to have it in this tilt. So this is now a different tilt, so you could also have it like this, but I found it to be more useful to have it in the sideward tilt, which then I usually have it in. So these are kind of the three options. There is also another option, which is this one, and then it would be even higher, but I found that in this position it is not very stable, so I usually have it in basically the outer angle, and because there is now less angle in total, because it is basically the lever is longer, so there is less angle, and so compared to this here, it is now not as high, so the angle is basically less, but well, it is more stable like this, so that's the reason I usually have it like this. There are a couple of additional downsides. One is that it comes with a transmitter. This transmitter actually does have a place, and this place is here. So on the right portion of the keyboard, there is this location where the transmitter goes, and the transmitter is somewhere in a USB hub, but I can get it just for the video. And this now is kind of a big downside. Why? In the beginning, once I got this, I also then took it with me to the library or whenever I worked somewhere else. Now, this was a kind of a problem because eventually I forgot the transmitter. And so now I had the keyboard without the transmitter. And so the next couple of hours I did have to work on my notebook, which was exactly not what I wanted to do. Now, wouldn't it be cool if this had actually Bluetooth? Yes, in theory. And this is also where the keyboard has a few shortcomings compared to higher-end keyboards like the MX Keys, which I had before. The MX Keys allowed me to have 3 different Bluetooth devices connected, similar to the Anywhere 2S, which I also have from Logitech. And so I could connect my keyboard to my first phone, to my second phone, and to my notebook. With this here, I only have one connector, and so because I have a desktop now, this is connected to the desktop. And so if I want to go somewhere, and I also then need a keyboard, and since I do not have another keyboard, I also now take this with me, and then of course sometimes I forget this transmitter. In total, I would say I do not want to look back. There are a couple of key decisions I made in the last couple of years, which is one, to stand. Once I changed my working position into standing, I never wanted to look back. If I now sit in the library somewhere, I notice that my alertness is not that high. Andrew Huberman also talks about the screens being ideally in or above eye level, which is also why I kind of designed it like this. Then there is the problem of shoulder pronation, which I have quite a bit in the rest of my life, so I am usually kind of hunched down anyway. And so I try to make a conscious effort. And also I try to have a posture correction for many years actually. I try to have it on almost always, apart from sleeping, even when running, even when working out. And also it made me notice more how much of a strain it then was to put my hands kind of in front of my body like this. So now I do no longer have a a holding correction, a posture correction, and I also do notice that my posture basically regresses all the time towards its kind of more natural position. But since I do no longer sit, which is already kind of a big bonus because, well, I'm now standing, so I can move my feet a little bit, and I also am now standing with a split keyboard, which makes, I think, all the different things connected to this just a little better and working a little easier.